My name is Joseph Hurst. I live in Ankeny, Iowa, and I'm a part of the PMBA program. I currently work as the Director of Sales at Stony Creek Hotels in Johnston, Iowa, and I chose the Iowa State MBA program because it just made perfect sense. About 2 years ago, I started this wonderful program, and I couldn't imagine not having done it. What has helped the most balance work, life, school, has been the people I'm in class with. It's great to go through questions, problems, study for tests, and it just makes the whole class so much easier. As a working professional thinking about doing an MBA program, I get night classes aren't everybody's dream. I get after a long day of work, you may not want to go do more, but it's worth it. You're going to learn a lot, not just from the professors in the program, but from the other students. They come from all walks of life. They are from different age groups. They're from different companies. They're from all kinds of different backgrounds. They've got all kinds of different stories. And after 2 years, I've made some of the best friends I've ever made, learned the most I've ever learned, and I can't imagine what we're going to do after we're done.
Success in farming is all about precision and efficiency, ensuring every seed, every drop of water, every nutrient and treatment counts. Terraplex Ag is helping farmers all over Iowa and the Midwest do just that. With precision ag drone technology and support from Terraplex, you'll boost your productivity and make timely and informed decisions, all while reducing your costs and increasing your profit. It's time to revolutionize your farming. Harvest the benefits with Terraplex Ag. Visit TerraplexAg.com.
Chris Williams, Brent Blum, from the Wild Rose Casino Studio. It's Williams and Blum, presented by Mechdyne, on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network.
What is up? Welcome to the Williams and Blum Wednesday here on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network. I am in the Wild Rose Casino Studio, the physical one. Blum is with us remote, and we are going to break down the upcoming weekend in college football. We have Maui to get ready for as well. Massive women's basketball game coming up next week. And then wrestling taking on Iowa, 2 football games. This is the busiest week of the year that we are jumping into. So tonight, Iowa State women will be at Northern Iowa. Probably won't talk about that because I don't want to date the podcast. But the first road trip of the year for them. How are you, Bloom? I'm trying to keep my head straight with all this stuff.
Need a calendar.
I got mine pulled up. My master.
Even that's not enough. No, things are good. We're hanging in there. I'm going to Salt Lake Friday morning, so just getting prepared for the mountains, buddy.
Where do you fly through anymore?
Denver.
Phoenix? Denver.
Yeah, it's actually only about an hour, 15 flight from Denver to Salt Lake. Not bad.
Didn't they used to have a direct to Salt Lake out of Des Moines?
I think at some point they did. They might still. I think they might still, but that one was packed by the time I purchased my ticket. So
I'll be out in your
So
time
I mentioned
zone.
it on Sunday night. All the folks that message me if you're going out there, I've been amazed at all the messages I got. There's going to be a lot of Cyclones out there. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I wish I could make the trip. I'm going to be in Las Vegas, so I'll just be, I don't know, right up the street, down the street, over the street. I don't know. I don't do the whole map thing.
I think that would be like 2 opposite big cities right there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it would be. That is true. I hadn't thought about it like that. I can promise you I'll be indulging in things that the Mormon
Salt Lake.
Yeah, probably not going to be touching.
Not the same.
Williams and Blum Wednesday. We are, as always, presented by our friends at Mechdyne, Mechdyne, enabling discovery. Go to Mechdyne.com. New Year's resolutions right around the corner. Maybe you hate your job. They got job openings at Mechdyne, baby. Go check them out and see all the great offers. They love hiring off Iowa Staters. Absolutely love it. Massive game coming up on Saturday, 6:30 kick here in Iowa. Watch Kyle Whittingham's press conference this morning. Before we get into this matchup that I like for Iowa State, the more I dig into it, Whittingham really dove into your world. He was asked a lot about NIL and the future and the transfer portal. And this guy, now that is my kind of a guy giving a press conference. That guy didn't hold much back, Brent Blum. He was talking about spending patterns, and basically he used the actual phrase, we have a big shopping list in the portal.
Yep.
He was talking about how with their plans for 2025 and beyond, how they have spreadsheets made with how much money they're going to allocate to each position going forward. I don't know. I thought it was really impressive that he would just be as transparent as he was. I'm telling you, I have no idea what Iowa State has planned. You probably know more than me, some that you can't divulge, but this transparency is a good thing for these people, for these fans who have been footing the bill. And man, if I'm a Utah fan, my team is 4-6 right now, but it's like, okay, this guy's got a plan to at least turn things around. I don't know. What did you think? Did you watch that? What was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought it felt like an NBA or an NFL GM that knew the season was basically done for, and so we're gonna look forward to the future, which is partly refreshing in this era of and like he said, Colorado turned it around really quickly. And how did they do it? Because they went shopping in the portal, his words. And what Whittingham said, which was interesting to me, and listen, that Utah is one of the bigger spenders. If you look at their budget, it's actually larger than Iowa State's, even though they've been in the Pac-12, which was making less. So they've had a lot of good support from their people for a long time. And that is showing itself in their budget from the athletic department, one. But it sounds like their NIL is fully funded in that they will meet that, whatever that threshold is of the cap, the soft cap of 21 million. And so they're going to be right there with the TCUs, with the Baylors of the world. It sounds like Kansas is going to be in that ballpark potentially, but we don't know for sure. But really what he said is, we're going to be almost half and half as far as new players go. And that is freshmen and portal guys. And that's a lot. I mean, he basically said, we are going to spend aggressively, which I think is for your fans, it's like, all right, well, at least like you said, Chris, at least they have a plan here. And that makes the 4-6 season they've had a little bit easier to digest because like he said, we can go to work here in two weeks and we're going to reload our roster pretty quickly. And that's the good part about this era is if you're down, you can turn it around pretty quickly, but it does take some investment.
Totally. He was also asked about Cam Rising and like basically, do you plan on giving him a pay cut since he hasn't been playing? And he essentially said no. He was like, he's still like, he was going through what it costs to have a high-end quarterback in the portal and basically what Rising would go for in the off market. And he was just basically like, yeah, we want to keep him here. I mean, that's how I understood that.
Well, and what he said, he had the numbers. He said an average powerful quarterback is going to make $1 million next year. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, that's where we're at. You're going to have, the Michigan guy came out, their new freshman is going to be $3 to $4 million. The Tennessee guys, probably he might be making 4 or 5 right now. Like this, whether you like it or not, that's the market now. And it was refreshing again for somebody with his stature who's been around a long time just to say, yeah, it is what it is. Like this is the sooner we get away from, let's not share information with the people, it's better for us. I think the better we're all going to be because it at least makes sure the transparency is understandable for what does it really take to compete. And you're not guaranteed. Like, listen, like Florida State, huge budget this year, miserable.
No doubt.
Huge budgets, miserable. Like it's not a perfect remedy, but the quarterback position in particular is one where if you're going to get somebody in the portal, it's going to cost money. And therefore, it's probably going to cost money to keep your best guys too, because of the amount they could get elsewhere. And that's just the way it's just like a football coach, C-Dub, honestly. Like you got to start thinking about your quarterback as if he's an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. That's your, and I would argue it's almost as important, right? Like that's a fair thing to say. And, as soon as administrations get their mind around that, it's going to be easier to understand. But right now, it's some of them are like, I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot for an individual who could get hurt. And so the other part that rose up from his thing was the fact that Rising did get hurt. So they probably had $1 million plus sunk into that guy, and he didn't play at all this year. Look at Iowa. The worst thing to happen to Iowa's NIL situation was that McNamara wasn't very good, and then he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, if I'm an Iowa fan, I'm going, why? You gave money to that. Like, so there are some perils of paying somebody that much. However, that is going to be the market, and the market opens up in 2 weeks.
It does. Yeah, I can't stress this enough, and I don't know if anybody listens to me or even if they should, but I just know fans, and more transparency, the better. I mean, I think Whittingham's a perfect example. It'd be really easy to bury this guy. He's too old. He hasn't been able to move at the times. New league. We need a fresh start. Couple of disappointing years in a row. He's lost touch. You watch that press conference. That's a guy with a plan. That's a confident guy just being transparent about what their plan is. And it's the way to go in this new era. Like, I think these fans deserve to know what the teams are spending and where the teams are spending it. I think the fans have earned that. I know there's people who will not agree with that. And they're protecting the whole their student athletes thing and whatever. I'm not even going to argue about that. It's just, if we're going to keep asking the fans to fund the thing, which to a degree we are, right? Even though it's not like directly through the collective like you're used to, if it's like the fans are still doing it. Like when that happens in the NFL, we know what the payroll is. We know what the right tackle's getting paid. There was other thing in that. There was a question in Whittingham's press conference about being able to fine players. Have you read about that? Like,
that was new to me.
I had not heard anything about that. I thought that was kind of out. But like, it is interesting though. It's like all these things, and I'm not even like blaming anyone again. Like, I'm not pointing a finger at Iowa State or Iowa or anyone locally, because I don't think anyone's doing anything wrong. There's all these things that are just going to keep happening that we hadn't even thought of. What we had thought of real quick was how we knew the Big 12 would get screwed in this playoff deal. And it, honestly, Brent, like, I knew it would happen. I was telling you guys in July it would happen. It's actually more brazen than I thought it would be after watching these college football playoff rankings come out. Like, you cannot explain to me how SMU should be one spot ahead of BYU. And even like, I hate that I'm doing this, because it's like, it's not Boise's fault that it's the conference they're in and that they've been, I guess, relegated to being like a mid-major. Like, it's not their fault. But if you look at who they've beaten, like it's not even in the same hemisphere as a team like BYU. You're like just getting rewarded for for good losses. Like this whole thing, I'm not surprised at all. I knew it was coming. It's still just disgusting, though. It's so brazen what these people are doing right now. Your thoughts?
Well, and then the classic Missouri example of they lose again and they don't drop.
The worst.
It's like,
that's the worst one in the entire top 25. What in the hell?
I literally, Chris, I made a point not to watch it because it's almost like, when you watch the news just to get mad. Like, I wasn't going to do it.
Quick, shout out to Greg McElroy for calling them out on their bullshit with Illinois. How they snuck Illinois into the top 25 so that they could prop up all those other Big Ten schedules.
It does seem to me, C-Dub, on a positive here, that more and more of the media is kind of like catching on to this a little bit. Now, will it matter? Probably not, because it's really just the people in the room. But like, I saw Cannell went after him a little bit. That Tom Fernelli guy from CBS, is that his name? I think that's his name.
Yeah, Fernelli. Yeah.
Got after him a little bit. Even Nicole Auerbach had a weird couple tweets about Indiana getting hosed, but you didn't say anything about the Big 12 getting hosed, but that's another story. But yeah, and
in my opinion, Indiana's more deserving of where they're at than BYU is.
Well, the hilarious part to me is now we're projecting of like, oh, well, Indiana might be able to lose on Saturday and still get in. Or now the conversation, which we knew was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. Now they're talking about an SEC school not wanting to play in the championship game. That's been the big topic today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, we've been talking about that for a month.
Mm.
So
Go back to July.
Yeah, I guess the good news for those of you listening to the Cyclone Fanatic podcast is this is nothing new. So it doesn't really make me outraged. I guess part of me is glad that, at least for Iowa State's concerned, you just have to win. You know, like that's the one nice part about not having to worry about what the polls say right now is like you just, at the end of the day, because you did lose 2 games, you just have to win. It makes it easier compartmentally as a fan to just go forward, but it still makes you mad just trying to think of it because it has a direct result on Iowa State's bottom line. And by the way, the bottom line now impacts your retention for players and getting players. So you could argue that this committee's decision to keep potentially only one Big 12 team will impact Iowa State's ability to keep its roster in the future. It's unfortunately the way of the world.
And there is an very outside shot that no Big 12 team could make the college football playoff if Army would go off and pull a big upset this weekend. So God bless our troops. We're rooting for Notre Dame on Saturday. Just absolute calamity, those rankings are. And to your point that you made about a month ago, this AP top 25 garbage at the beginning of the year is the culprit to all of this. I don't think that committee has an independent bone in its body. I think it's tied to ESPN, and I think that they just went into this thing looking at the AP poll and made a few moves. Because you can't look at the actual data and the metrics and make any sense of it other than that they're just going off of the AP poll. And I've explained to you guys why the AP poll is archaic and shouldn't even be taken seriously.
Yeah, and again, you're just going to make me mad, and I'm going to be mad for the rest of the day.
My blood pressure is just I have veins popping out of my eyeballs right now.
Hey, it's the system they designed, and here we are. So anybody could have seen this coming. I guess it's not a mystery. That makes me feel a little bit better that we were correct. I'm not great. I'm not excited that we were correct. So the question is, how do you fix it?
I'll tell you how to fix it.
Do you add 4 teams? Like, would that help?
No, absolutely not. Here's how you fix it. And this is why it won't ever happen. We just went through an election in our country, okay?
I recall.
Like, did you see, very rare that you had one person who was entrenched on one side and one person who was entrenched on the other, where they would come together and like meet in the middle. It's like, it's insane. You have these 2 presidential candidates and there's 300 topics and you're telling me they absolutely disagree on everything. Do you know how hard that is to actually disagree on 300 separate things and be completely opposite of one another? It's not possible because we're all posturing, okay? That's all it is. It's all a big fraud. Now, here's the problem, and this is where I'm going to tie it into college football, because those SEC fans don't give a shit about the Big 12 fans, right? Just like the lefty didn't really care about the righty and vice versa, and they're not ever going to meet in the middle. When this has happened in other sports, European soccer specifically, the rich people cared about the little people. And they said it's better for us and it's better for our sport if the little people have the means to do this. This is the best thing for all of us. Nobody cares about that in this country. Nobody cares about that in this sport. And we see the same thing in basketball. You're not all high and mighty Iowa State fan. How much sleep do you lose over Northern Iowa in the Valley and stuff like that, right? Like it's really the same thing, just at a massively bigger scale. So I don't think there is a way to fix it other than the way to fix it is outrage. The media is going to have to be a big part of it. Unfortunately, people look at guys like us and they go, they're just biased. Okay. You're right. Like the national people have to really make noise, and the fans do. The fans have to make a lot of noise. So be as annoying as you guys can be to these people. But up until then, like it's really about money. I guarantee Greg Sankey doesn't give a shit about BYU. And frankly, Brett Yormark doesn't really care about the Mountain West in basketball. This is the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yep.
There you go.
We all have our little fiefdoms in college athletics, and until those fiefdoms break down, this is the way it's going to be. So you might be able to expand the playoff, but that's just going to add, more drama, money to the pot, which is going to cause more problems.
I do think the one thing they could do, if you expand the playoff to make this, it's never going to be fair, but to make it like a real national, is give an automatic bid to every conference champion. The Sun Belt.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Because I want a national tournament. Like if we're going to have a playoff, have it be a national playoff, not 12 teams, 5 from the SEC. not regional, have it truly be that's what makes the NCAA basketball tournament so good, is because you got the SWAC champion and you've got now football is very different, right? Like football is like the chances of a Sun Belt champ rolling into Oregon and upsetting the Ducks is going to be very difficult to do. It's not like basketball, but it will make it a national tournament. It will make it a deal where, and then you're splitting revenue for those leagues to give them a chance too, right?
Yeah, but and you know it's not going to happen because Notre Dame's the perfect example. Like they won't even join a conference.
No, I know you're right. Like I'm not.
Exactly.
I don't disagree with you. It won't ever happen. But if like it,
the only way it's going to get fixed is if the whole thing breaks down completely and you start over. I mean, you almost need ESPN and Fox to go bankrupt before it gets fixed. I'm serious.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Thank our friends at Game Day Men's Health. I weighed in the other day. Just be honest with you. I'm under 190 pounds for the first time since Cameron was born.
You dog. Nice, man.
Thanks to Game Day Men's Health. They've been doing this deal too. It's this electronic like shockwave things on my elbows. My elbows are like tennis elbow. You're a tennis guy. Did you ever have that when you play golf or anything?
No, I'm just a natural born
athlete. Yeah. Oh my God, it feels really good. It really is loosening them up. If you guys need any Game Day Men's Health, testosterone therapy.
I'm going there tomorrow, C-Dub.
There you go.
Getting ready for Salt Lake, baby.
Yeah. Thank our friends at Gravitate Co-working. GravitateCoworking.com. All of your co-working needs. That's a good 2025 thing to start thinking about. You need a change of pace with your office space. I would also like to thank our friends at Mr. B Clothing down in Clive. Christmas season, the holiday season, you want to look your best. Mr. B Clothing, the back room as well. That is my favorite place to go. That's down in Beaverdale.
Here's a question for you. Speaking of clothing, the dinner thing we have with some donors Friday nights at a fancier restaurant than I normally go to, and the dress code is mountain chic.
What in the hell is that?
CHIC. What would you wear for that? Mountain chic. I don't know. Like I'm.
Is that like those cowboy like ties?
Maybe
with like the turquoise
like the bolo ties. Like I can't pull that off. That's
just go and watch an episode of Yellowstone.
Well, I thought about just becoming Costner there and see what comes up with. But
at least you're gonna have that shot of tea. About 2 days to get into your system.
So at least I'll
be in a really good spot there.
I'll be at least standing straight up and ready to go. But so I think it's like jeans and a sport coat. Maybe would that work?
Oh, Aiden's pulling it up right here.
I look
this
just
is what
like that
came
guy
up for mountain chic.
Mountain chic.
I've found when you Google, like, I have this problem. I don't know what like business formal means or something like that.
Everybody's got a different.
And so it's like, So take it with a grain of salt.
So mountain chic is basically jeans with a flannel and a white t-shirt.
Well, I'm a big quarter zip pullover guy. Like, is that too?
You got to have a flannel.
No, I don't do flannel. Like that's one thing I don't do flannel. Now I don't really want to bring a sport coat on the plane. I mean,
I got to fit right in with these people.
Yeah, you are mountain chic.
That's like all I wear this time of year.
If anybody has any suggestions from out west, what I might be able to wear to not look completely out of place, but also not uncomfortable either. Thank you.
That's at Brent Blum on Twitter.
Yes. If you're about comfortability, I think Mike Tyson's pants from the other night.
Just wear a thong.
Yeah, assless chaps. Can't go wrong.
That's mountain chic.
Pull up any other mountain chic things you've got for us, Aiden, and we'll take a look at that.
Mountain chic.
Last but certainly not least, Iowa State University Foundation, MoveWhatMatters.com. I got done filming those commercials today. That was kind of fun. We went to the Memorial Union today. I haven't been in the Union. You know what's crazy, Bloom? I've been in the Union well over 10 years.
Seriously? Oh, yeah. Man.
Well, when I walked in, just instinctively, I walked around the circle thing.
Oh, you still got to. Yeah.
I didn't even think about it. It's just like, you got to do it.
Yep. You got to keep the vibes.
What did you think of the guys who would just walk right over it just to spite you?
Yeah. And whatever happened to them?
Yeah. They're nothing now.
Yeah. Make sure
they're nothing now.
Do you just call it the Union?
Yeah.
That sounds like you're going to put in your punch card.
What is it? What's it called?
MU. Yeah.
It's the Memorial Union.
Yeah, but just calling it the Union. Like, oh, went back to the Union today.
Yeah, it's the Union.
Worked a 9 to 5.
It's the Union. Anyways, we got the commercials done. We got the documentary done. It's going to be lovely. All right, thanks to my friends at the foundation for asking me to do that.
Can't wait to see that.
All right, let's dig into this game. I'll tell you why I like the matchup. And Blum we can't go for too long today because Blum has very important meetings, incredibly important meetings that he has to get to. He is funding the future of Iowa State.
Part of the earlier conversation.
All right, so Utah doesn't run the ball well, so that's good. Take that. They also, like as Matt Campbell said this week, they're the best defense that Iowa State has seen this year. I'll buy that. I don't think Matt is overhyping them there.
I'm purchasing that myself.
Yep. They did struggle last week against the pass with Deion Sanders' team. Now, a little different. I think Iowa State's a better matchup for them than Colorado was. Colorado likes to go 4 or 5 wide. Iowa State plays more with the tight ends. However, Iowa State has a pretty versatile offense where they can do more than just what they do, right? And I would like to think that Taylor Mauser and the staff will scout that. But I actually am pretty confident going into this game in a weird way. I don't like going west. There's a part of me that thinks that Utah's probably got they can still get to a bowl. So and it's senior day there. So I think that they're going to be engaged. I don't think this is a checked out football team, but like the Isaac Wilson thing. So that's the Utah quarterback, Zach Wilson's little brother who played at BYU and was drafted by the Jets, who I think he's still in the NFL somewhere. He kind of played okay in spurts against Colorado, specifically in the second half. But, I mean, Blum, doesn't this game come down to if Iowa State's defense can keep their running game bad? I mean, they were terrible. They ran for like 27 yards last week against Colorado.
Yeah.
Won't this Wilson kid throw some picks against Iowa State's secondary if they can keep the running game in check?
Yeah, so somebody, and I thought actually a really good comp, the last 4 weeks, this Utah offense is like Iowa a year ago. The problem is it's like Iowa a year ago, but also throwing interceptions, which is a bad recipe.
Yeah, good point.
It's not just last game where they struggled to run the ball, which as an Iowa State fan should make you feel good. I'll give you the last 4 games. 2.6 yards per carry against TCU, 3.3 yards per carry against Houston, 4.9 yards per carry against BYU, and then 1 yard per carry against Colorado. That's bad. Like that is not good. And the passing game hasn't exactly been lighting it up either. And in addition to that, they've had 4 turnovers in the last 3 games. So that's a horrible recipe. Like if you can't run the ball and you're throwing picks all the time, your offense is what, and that's why they've been awful on offense. Now, defensively, these guys are good. They are. They've only allowed 400 yards or more one time, and that was last week to Colorado, who obviously with 3 really good receivers. So I fully anticipate it's going to be a slog for Iowa State's offense. This is not going to be lighting up the scoreboard. Just prepare, guys. I think this is going to be similar first half to that Houston game where you're going to be like, what's going on? Like the hope would be you figure out something just like Iowa State did against Cincinnati. The more I look at that over under, I think it's maybe too high. I think this game.
I went 24-17. You're telling me is that too many points?
24-17.
That's what I went with. That seems high.
If Utah keeps at its, I just don't see how they can win a high possession game here. I could see where they just want to keep it on the ground. But yeah, I mean, the more I look at it, the intangibles are hard to predict. But as far as they are just so banged up, I mean, they are injured all over the place on offense. They just don't have any weapons right now. And we've seen people be able to run the ball in Iowa State, though. So they're going to try it. Like, you have to try it against Iowa State. I think with Iowa State's getting healthier there, McLaughlin, Sadowski back, I just think Iowa State should be able to slow them down. And I agree. I mean, if I'm looking at this game as a neutral observer, I think Iowa State has the edges from a personnel standpoint. It's just the intangibles. I'm not sure. Senior day, going out west, all the above there.
Yeah, and Whittingham is a good coach, right?
Yeah,
like this doesn't,
absolutely.
It feels a little different too than like the Oklahoma State situation. I was doing a ton of prep for this morning because I had a weird week and I haven't been able to do much. Weirdest stat of the year, okay? Craziest stat of the year. Oklahoma State right now, 117th nationally in rushing yards per game. Imagine that stat being told to you in August.
What happened to Ollie Gordon?
I don't know. But that's my point. Like, I think Oklahoma State, you can really, without knowing, I don't know what's going on in their program, but it certainly seems like a bunch of guys who don't really get along, and maybe Mike's kind of lost that group. I don't sense that here with Utah. Like, it feels like a bunch of guys that are playing hard. It's just they've had a ton of injuries. And I don't know, Whittingham has like this really, solid presence to him. So I think Iowa State's going to get Utah's best shot. It's just when I break down the numbers, and I also think Iowa State has hit its rock bottom, right? Like that Kansas game was it, and I think they're on an incline until the bowl game, and we'll see what happens there. And I mean, guys will start transferring, and that whole thing starts, and it's a whole totally different deal, whatever the bowl game ends up being. But I don't know. I like Iowa State the next 2 weeks. I think they could realistically finish this thing off and be 10-2.
Yeah, interesting. I think they got their injuries. They're obviously Iowa State's still banged up, but you're getting some guys back where the BYU guys, or excuse me, the Utah guys are all out for the year now, and so they're not getting them. But again, I'm looking at, Utah's still really good at home. And I know they've lost 3 games in a row there at home, but it was 1 point to BYU. Everybody remembers that game. They had it won, and they lost it late. TCU was a nail biter, lost by 6. And then the Arizona game, they just flat out didn't play well and threw a bunch of picks. As we know, there's 2 things to keep an eye on here. If it turnovers, and then where Colorado really shoved the door on Utah was a punt return for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those are the types of things that as John Walters sent me a text yesterday, he's like, "Hey, why isn't Shaky Smithson being brought up this week?" And I said, "John,
we don't say that word.
We don't
this
say
time
that
of year.
out loud, pal."
No, John, that is a off-season conversation, my friend.
But all it takes is a punt return or a kick return, and that defense is good enough at Utah. Again, just like Iowa was a year ago, you get down 7-10 to those guys, and they can grind you down. So that's the concern. Is something like that happening weird, and then it's a 1-score game and anything can happen.
Yeah, I don't want to be overconfident because I'm not. Like that little bit of a Kansas situation here because you look at how many 1-possession games they've had. Yes. Like this actually reminds me more of Iowa State 2022 than the Kansas team did. I used that example, but this is a very defensive-oriented team that just hasn't been able to score.
Yep.
But we all know we lived through that. And I'm sure the Utah fans feel the same way, where it's a horrible situation as a fan where you just can't score, right?
Yeah.
Like they've moved the ball. And Deckers was, throwing some picks at the end of the year. And I don't know. I've said it. I've said it all the year. If Iowa State's defense can do what it needs to do up front, which is going to be tough. I'm guessing Singleton's out. I don't know all the specifics. Certainly doesn't feel like he's going to be out there. If they can take care of business up front, I love Iowa State's secondary against this Wilson kid.
Yep. Totally agree.
And I could see Iowa State getting a defensive score.
Yep.
Honestly,
for me, it's turnover, special teams, and then, offensively doing enough. I don't think this is a game you need to get real exotic, though, because, like we talked about earlier in the year, the more exotic you get, the more that can go wrong. I firmly believe turnovers are going to tell the story of this game.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that Iowa State can't throw it. They can, but you certainly don't want to give Utah a short field with a bad offense.
No, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. All right. The other thing, too, that I kind of stopped going through season team stats like I used to, you and me used to be a whiz with those things. We'd be like, well, they rank blank nationally in yards per play on first down, whatever.
Yeah.
Iowa State's been a better running team this year than I think most people think. Because it really has felt like the last few games, it's like such a slog to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they're in the top 45.
Right. That's what
which isn't great, but I think they were 44th. And because I was looking at all these other Big 12 teams, and I'm like, where does Iowa State stack up? I was just curious. And they're top 25 in passing and top 45 in rushing. So really, like, I don't know. I don't know what I expected, because again, I don't value these statistics like I did 10 years ago. But when I was stacking them up against their peers, I'm like, this offense is really pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where
you're 8-2.
Exactly. Like the one area where obviously it hasn't been as good is red zone efficiency.
Red zone, exactly.
So it doesn't feel as good if you're punting in some of those things. And again, last week against Cincinnati in the first half, kind of got stalled out a couple times at the 30-yard line. So that makes it feel worse. But yeah, when you look holistically at the season, now when you went back, you had 3 games in a row over 235 yards rushing. That's really going to help. Now it's dropped a little bit since then. But yeah, if you had told me Iowa State's going to average 4.5 yards per carry before the season, which is exactly where they're at right now, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. It's been a weird way to get there. Some games have been great. Others, like the Kansas game, have not been good at all. But if Iowa State, by and large, statistically, yardage-wise and yards per play-wise is fine. It's just the scoring hasn't compared exactly to where it could be relative to your peers in that same neighborhood.
Yep, well said. All right, let's do our Whiffles Hybrids Big 12 segment here on Williams and Blum. Plant your independence, plant Whiffles, baby. What a weekend. What a weekend we have. The Big 12 is one of the sexiest leagues going into this week, I would say, and it starts with BYU at Arizona State, 2:30. I'm only going to do the games that matter. Are you cool with that? I know we're both on a time thing today. So real quick, Bloom, simplify it. Iowa State fans should be rooting for Arizona State and Kansas, right?
Probably, yeah. That's the simplest way to go. Now, there's other paths there. There's other routes for Iowa State to get in. But I think to simplify it on a Wednesday, Arizona State, Team Kansas. Interestingly, C-Dub, first sellout for Arizona State in a long, long time for that game. So good for them.
Yeah, I'm looking at the SeatGeek. The lowest ticket to get into that game right now is $247.
I don't know if you remember when I went to Phoenix this spring, I met an Iowa Stater who's in the administration there at Arizona State, and happy for that. Like, awesome dude. Happy to see some of their success. It seems like those guys mean well and largely are happier to be in the Big 12 than some other schools.
Like Utah?
Yes. Like Utah.
I'm surprised. I haven't caught a single stray from a Utah fan.
That's been the nice part about them being awful this year.
Yeah, because they shut up.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my gut tells me Arizona State and Colorado win this weekend.
Yeah.
Where are you at on Kansas, Colorado? I think Kansas is the sexy pick. We're all like hopeful. But I don't know. This Dion team just keeps finding ways to win.
No, they do. I think Colorado's going to score. What Kansas does, though, that is really hard, and Haycock actually mentioned in his presser yesterday, John said that they've seen more option than they have in years this year. And so that's kind of the way to beat, in a way, that 3-3-5 is you run the option, because it just puts those linebackers really in a tough spot.
Yeah, they got to make a decision.
Yep. And Kansas does that about as well as anybody. And without knowing all of Colorado's defensive game plan, I could see KU's offense giving them some serious trouble. But I don't know with KU's secondary and defense in general, how they slow down those receivers for Colorado. I'm going to guess that over-under is pretty high. I think that's a high-scoring game. And ultimately, it comes down to me, does Jaden Daniels have his head on straight? And
so we like the over-under of 59.5. We like the over?
I think so for that. Yeah, I really do. Now, I got to look at the forecast and if there's wind and all that stuff. But, yeah, I think both teams are going to have struggle to stop each other.
The only other game this week that I'll pay attention to in the Big 12 is Cincinnati at Kansas State, just because it'll directly impact Iowa State next week. I don't know. Kansas State's a 9-point favorite. I would probably take the points here and play with Cincinnati.
That's a tough back-to-back road trips for Cincy. I kind of got hosed by the schedule.
It is, but
there.
Have you watched the Kansas State stuff? It's weird.
I don't get them at all. They're starting to get a little anxious with old Kleiman down at K-State. Last week. That's a bad loss. Like, listen,
Dude, that was one of the most shocking outcomes of the season.
I agree.
For me.
And I need to go back. I haven't watched it yet, but it wasn't even close. Like, they were not even competitive in that game.
It was just weird. Like, I respect Kleiman a lot. Like, he was like crying after the game. There's something going on, like, personally and it's none of my business. But he had like another emotional press conference this week, and it's just weird. And you're right. Like, Greg McDermott told me this once, and he said that I'm giving away a chapter of my book, but it's okay. But he said what happens in college sports is that once you lose your fan base, they actually work against you.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kansas State thing's weird. I'm not saying that Kleiman is where like McDermott was, but when I watch Kansas State, and I don't have a problem with it. I actually think that they had the most in common with Iowa State than any Big 12 fan base. So it's like
absolutely.
They kind of like you fight and quabble with your brother a little bit. That's how I view them. I look at them and I'm like, man, you guys should be really happy with what you got with Kleiman and I don't know, Tang's up in the air. We'll see what he does in year 3. Like, I mean, he was really good the one year, and then last year was an abomination. The whole bitching and moaning about everything, like it was a joke. But like, why would they be upset with Kleiman? Like, that's where I'm looking at it. It's just like, God, it almost feels toxic down there right now in a weird way. Well, because they're pretty good. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, who do you think is the best team in the league, I still probably would have said Kansas State, even despite their losses.
But this is this new era for a lot of fan bases, and I'm putting Iowa State in that. You know, once you got to 5-0.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. It's no doubt.
It's playoff or bust, right?
Yeah.
And they are now out.
Great point. I mean, who am I to say that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, honestly, like, we're not to where K-State from an angst standpoint is, because Iowa State's still kind of alive here. But I would say we've seen a similar thing of the problem with the playoff and devaluing the bowls. The bowls aren't as cool anymore, and it's playoff or bust for a lot of folks. And I understand it. Like, that makes sense to me. And so when you lose back-to-back games to Houston and Arizona State, your season is now gone.
Especially home games.
Yeah. Like, so I do get it, but I also understand where you're coming from. Is like, still,
I don't know.
They are pretty good. I mean, it's interesting.
You also have to ask yourself the question we have, like, okay, you're going to buy him out. You could spend that money on players. Mm-hmm. You know, you nailed this months ago. Dudes aren't getting fired at the Power 5 level. Herman got axed this week, which I thought was interesting. They must have really wanted to get rid of Tom. Yeah, he got kicked out in 2 years at Florida Atlantic, and they were going sideways pretty quickly. So they probably were just cut bait. I could see Tom being difficult too. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know, like, he's not like a guy who is, and I love him, by the way. Anyways, I'm talking about Chris Kleiman. To your point, he's one of those guys you put up with him if you're winning. Yeah. Yeah. One of those dudes. It's honestly, I don't know. I've been monitoring this Big 12 situation, and it's like this Indiana guy just gets this massive deal, Cignetti, and he probably deserves it, but they haven't beaten anyone with a winning record. Like, this could be Mel Tucker all over again, minus the off the field stuff. I'm not accusing Cignetti of that. But like, we just get so anxious to lock these guys up and then to fire them, right? I don't know. It's funny because you're under pressure both ways. When you're winning, you have pressure to lock up your coaches long term. From not only the coaches, by the way, because they're looking for, hey, are you appreciating me or not? But then also there's that negative of, if you overcommit, you're Iowa right now. Mm-hmm.
They can't get rid of Ferentz.
Mm-hmm.
If they got rid of Ferentz, they owe him $50 million. They can't. You're stuck.
Which is like a, roster payment for the next 2.5 years.
Exactly. Like that.
For your whole athletic department.
I would lean if I'm an athletic director, administrator, say, hey, I thank you for what you've done. We got to be way more flexible than giving you a monster deal. But I understand it. If you haven't done it before, it's never been a better time in a long time to be an Indiana fan. Like, everybody gets caught up in we're doing great. We're raising money. We're doing all this stuff. Well, 2 years from now, we'll see.
Thank our friends at the Iowa Clinic Men's Center for sponsoring Williams and Blum Wednesday here on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network. Flu season. I hope you got your flu shots. I hope you got them already. If you didn't, you can still go and get your flu shot at the Iowa Clinic. I got mine early this year. I was a good boy. Got it with my physical, my perfect numbers now because of game day men's health and lost all that. And my doctor, he was so proud of me at the Iowa Clinic.
Red Bull. As you're drinking a Red Bull.
I'm chugging a Red Bull at 3:00 in the afternoon. Speaking of that, I'm going to Vegas this weekend. I'm going to be wearing my Team Red Bull gear.
Who are their drivers again?
Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. He sucks though. We should have fired him 2 years ago. It's unbelievable that Sergio still. We're supposed to be the Yankees, right? Like we're supposed to be. Well, we're not the Yankees, but we would probably be the Red Sox in baseball terms. What Red Bull is Ferrari's the Yankees, and then it's probably us and Mercedes and And we keep this shit driver around, and I have no idea why. It drives me. Better? He's a great guy. Like I love him. He's a really cool dude, but he's like a second behind our other guy in the exact same car, and it drives me nuts. I've really gotten way too much into this Formula One thing too. I may as well just be European at this point. I don't think I'd fit in over there though. Yeah.
What do they have? If it's Mountain Chic in Salt Lake, what is it in the Alps? Would they have Mountain Chic too?
I don't know. I wouldn't do well there either.
Yeah.
I don't ski. I just sit in the clubhouse.
Hey, Aiden, can you Google? Do Europeans wear flannel?
I can see him Googling it right now.
Because if they do, you'd be okay, at least short term, until people started talking to you, at least.
What do we got, Aiden?
Yes, flannel is a popular fabric in European fashion.
Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe, Chris, you'll be better off than you think now until you open your mouth.
They would not like
it.
All right, last but not least, Maui is coming up. We'll cover this extensively on Sunday night. I'm warning you, Bloom, we're going to have to record at like midnight on Sunday. If you're okay with that.
I'm good with that.
Also, one quick thing. Full preview of Maui coming up on Let 'Em Cook.
Oh, good.
Tomorrow morning. Thursday morning.
Fantastic. Those guys can help us do that. Because, I don't know, maybe we could go Monday morning live after two guys. And I don't know. We'll figure it out when Sunday pod is going to be. But Bloom and I are both coming back from Western time zones, and those flights get in really late, and we'll figure it out. The Cyclones took care of business against, who did they play? Uipui the other night. Whatever. I'm not even going to analyze the game.
Not worth it.
What are you... Hey, Aiden, pull up our Maui Invitational odds real quick if you can.
I haven't looked.
What do you want to see? Like, we all want to win. Are you going to be happy with 2-1?
Yeah,
Maui?
I'd be very happy with 2-1. 1-2 won't kill you. 0-3, not great, but survivable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously you want to win, but more than anything, I'm super, super curious about the 8th and 9th person in the rotation right now. Like, I think it's a fascinating discussion.
Oh my God, I've gotten so many questions about Demarion Watson's whereabouts.
So have I. But even more than that, on the game Monday, and I'm not going to read anything into it, Noyes played more than Nate. Now, the game before, Nate played more than Noyes by a long shot. Who's the first person off the bench in that guard spot? I think that's a fascinating question, so I'm looking for that. And then more than anything, C-Dub, the first game you're going to find out, how do those bigs handle the speed and quickness of somebody like an Auburn? Because you're going to see the same thing in the Big 12. And that's the one remaining question I have. These guys are rebounding great. They're just manhandling these smaller schools. But you face a big, athletic, quick team like Auburn. Is Deshaun, Brant, and and Joshua quick enough to handle that on the defensive end. I think and you're going to see it in the first game right away. And the great thing is, give me these 3 games because I'm going to learn way more about my team than by playing a couple other random directional schools.
Completely agree. Aiden's pulled it up. It looks like this is from FanDuel, the Maui odds. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. If not, I will read it to you. It is Connecticut at plus 170. You've got Auburn, Iowa State's first game. So this tells you what this line will probably be. Auburn at plus 310. You have North Carolina at plus 400. And you have Iowa State at plus 430. Then a big drop down to Michigan State at plus 1,300. Memphis at plus 3,000. Dayton at plus 4,000. Colorado at plus 550 or 5,500. It looks like the Iowa State Auburn line will be around 5, 4.5, 5. Auburn will be a favorite in that game.
Yeah, I was going to say right around 3 to 4. So yeah,
Ken Palm has 5 right now.
Does he have it? Okay. Well, they have a marquee win on the road, so it makes sense. I think that game. I know people are like, oh my gosh, why are you playing them? And I get it; it's a bad seeding by the Maui people. However, give me that test in Maui. Like I want that. I want that game. I want to see how Iowa State reacts to that game.
I mean, this game's less about bringing home the trophy, which would be awesome.
Yes,
to have that trophy. And more about, can you just get a couple of quad 1 wins?
Yeah, give me a couple wins, and then I want from, again, basketball wise, are you quick enough to handle the speed of somebody like an Auburn, somebody like a North Carolina? Because if you do, and you're able to keep up pace with them, you're going to be A-okay, guys. Like I don't lose too much sleep over these games. Now going 0-3 would be bad. Don't get me wrong. But Iowa State recovered just fine a year ago from
that was a bad tournament, Orlando.
Bad from Orlando. I'm more worried about how does Iowa State look in these games rather than the result. The result is obviously a bonus.
Well said. And then, of course, Thanksgiving next week, the women will be playing South Carolina, so we have plenty of time to get ready for that one. All right, Blum, thank you. I know you got a meeting to get to. Good stuff today. Thanks to Aiden Wyatt for producing, as always. We will be back sometime either late Sunday night or early Monday morning. We'll let you guys know. Let them cook, as Aiden said. If you're jonesing for some basketball, those guys will have a complete preview of the Maui Invitational. For Brent Blum, for Aiden Wyatt, I'm Chris Williams signing off here. Williams and Blum Wednesday on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network.